Saddam Hussein and his sons must leave Iraq within 48 hours.
ثانياً الحكم على صدام.
The 8-year war between Iran and Iraq weakened both states. During the war, Iraq borrowed from foreign countries, bringing its foreign debt to $100 billion. Iraq's debt to Kuwait alone was nearly $40 billion. As soon as the war with Iran ended, Kuwait demanded repayment from Iraq. There was also an unresolved border issue between Iraq and Kuwait. Iraqi President Saddam Hussein claimed that Kuwait was Iraqi territory. As Kuwait exported large amounts of oil prices were dropping, which reduced demand for Iraqi oil. Relations between the two countries grew tense, and Iraq could invade Kuwait at any moment. At this time, the U.S. ambassador to Iraq met with Saddam and expressed that the U.S. did not favor war, but also would not take sides among the Arab countries or involve itself in an economic conflict with Iraq. This was a green light for Saddam to invade Kuwait. In August 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait, which raised a white flag within 2 days. Kuwait was occupied and declared a province of Iraq. The UN Security Council condemned Iraq and called on Saddam to end the occupation. But Saddam ignored the calls. A harsh embargo was imposed on Iraq. Saddam responded to the pressures, saying, "If Israel withdraws from occupied Palestinian lands, and if American soldiers stationed in Saudi Arabia are replaced by Arab soldiers, I will consider the Kuwait issue." Saddam, in defiance of the UN resolutions, prohibited Westerners from leaving Iraq. The UN Security Council gave Iraq until January 15, 1991, to withdraw its forces from occupied areas. Iraq ignored this as well, leading it to the brink of a new war. On January 17, 1991, under the leadership of the US, a coalition of 37 countries, including the UK, France, Saudi Arabia, Syria, and Egypt, began a military operation against Iraq. The Operation Desert Storm continued until February 28, 1991. Iraq was defeated and forced to accept the US's terms. After the unsuccessful Kuwait War, Iraq's economy collapsed, its military weakened, and its foreign debt reached trillions. Around this time, Kurds in the north and Shiites in the south began uprisings. Saddam responded ruthlessly, killing thousands and forcing millions to flee to Iran and Turkey. This was the beginning of the road leading to Iraq's occupation. Another embargo was placed on Iraq, and Saddam was accused of committing genocide. The US claimed that Iraq possessed numerous weapons of mass destruction, and that Saddam would soon use these against Europe and the US. Saddam, however, stated he had no weapons of mass destruction and even allowed searches in his country. UN monitoring and inspection teams came to Iraq, conducted searches, but found no such weapons. In 1998, Saddam claimed that the inspectors were U.S. spies. In that year, the U.S. bombed Iraq for 4 days, and weapons inspectors left the country. In 2000, George Bush came to power in the U.S.
God bless you all, and God bless America.
2 years later, Washington stated the need to resume weapon searches in Iraq.
Our enemy is a radical network of terrorists and every government that supports them.
Iraq again claimed it did not possess weapons of mass destruction. The U.S. stated that there was no democracy in Iraq.
It arises directly from the Iraqi regime's own actions, its history of aggression.
And that the Iraqi people needed to be freed from Saddam's regime. Saddam again allowed searches for weapons in the country. On February 2nd, 2003, searches for weapons resumed in Iraq. But no weapons of mass destruction were found. On February 14th, the UN Security Council held a meeting. Hans Blix, the president of the UN's Monitoring, Inspection, and Verification Commission, said, "We did not find the weapons in Iraq that some countries claimed existed." At the meeting, U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell criticized the report, saying, "Iraq continues to violate laws and is rearming. Iraq is deceiving us. Although military force is the last option, we are compelled to do this because negotiations have failed. We must make a decision."
Saddam was a supporter of terrorism long before these terrorist networks had a name. And this support continues. The nexus of poisons and terror is new.
The UK also supported using military force against Iraq, while Russia and France opposed intervention. Failing to garner sufficient support, the U.S. accused Saddam of aiding al-Qaeda, the organization responsible for the 2001 attacks in the U.S. In every statement, the U.S. emphasized the importance of bringing democracy to Iraq, eliminating weapons of mass destruction, and neutralizing terrorists by entering Iraq.
It possesses and produces chemical and biological weapons. It is seeking nuclear weapons. It has given shelter and support to terrorism.
Experts suggested that the real reason was to seize Iraqi oil and overthrow Saddam, who defied Washington's demands. In some sources, protecting Israel's existence and security is also cited as a reason. On March 17, 2003, George Bush addressed Saddam, giving him 48 hours to leave the country with his family.
Saddam Hussein and his sons must leave Iraq within 48 hours.
Saddam Hussein responded that he would defend his country to the death. The 48-hour deadline for Saddam expired. March 20th, 2003. At 4:50 in the morning, explosions began to be heard in Iraq. The U.S. entered Iraq with 500,000 troops, the UK with 45,000, Australia with 2,000, and Poland with 179 soldiers.
Fast up! Throw that fucking... Hey, get your sight! Step in here.
The U.S. Army quickly approached Karbala and Baghdad. Baghdad surrendered on April 9th. There were rumors that Saddam had either been killed or escaped from the country. On April 10th, he addressed the nation, stating he was alive and would continue fighting. However, the sectarian conflict in Iraq had already intensified. By May 1st, 2003, the country had surrendered to the U.S., but Saddam and his sons had vanished. In July, Saddam's 2 sons and grandson were killed in Mosul. Saddam Hussein was captured in his birthplace, Tikrit, in December 2003. In 2006, Saddam Hussein was sentenced to death by an Iraqi court. His last words to the judge in the courtroom were, "Who are you to judge me?" You are a traitor sold to the U.S.
بدلالة المادة 24 من قانون المحكمة الجنائية العراقية العليا رقم 10 لسنة 2005 قراراً حضورياً وبالاتفاق.
This homeland is ours. This nation, this Ummah, will hold you accountable.
بالسجن 10 سنوات ارتكاب إبعاد السجن.
On December 30th, he was hanged. However, the joy of people in democratized Iraq was short-lived. Chaos and civil war continued in the country for many years, and the weapons of mass destruction sought by the U.S. were never found in Iraq.